If you could take a moment and go to thegrowingbanddirector.com to give at least $5 or $3 a month, and it helps the content continue to be created for you to help our profession grow. Let's go back to our scheduled episode. Excelsior Music Publishing is proud to sponsor the Growing Band Director podcast. The new concert band and jazz ensemble music releases from Excelsior Music Publishing are here now and available from wherever you get your band music, featuring works of all levels from an incredible composer roster. Listen, browse, and get inspired at excelsiormusic.com. That's EXCELCIA music.com. Teachers, do spend valuable time all year correcting your students' hand position instead of focusing on the music? Thumb Gummy solves that. These simple, cost-effective teaching aids fit on trumpets and trombones to guide the right hand into proper playing position, reducing tension, improving form, and giving tactile feedback so students can focus on playing, not adjusting. It's easy to use, comfortable, and designed by teachers and players for beginners as well as older students. Join thousands already seeing the difference, and keep an eye out for our new clarinet thumb rest coming soon. Visit thumbgummy.com to learn more. That's thumbgummy.com. If you're a band or orchestra director looking to streamline your rehearsals and help your students take ownership of their intonation, you need to know about Tuner Caddy. It was invented by Mark Casperson, a veteran band director with 38 years in the classroom. Like lots of us, he was tired of drop tuners, scattered materials, and constant reminders. So he created a solution, and after 57 prototypes, the Tuner Caddy was born. It's been used by some of the most respected programs in the country. Mouse Middle School, Cooper Junior High School, Harbor Creek and Creek Valley, Rushing Middle School, Stiles and Grisham Middle Schools, and the Henry Middle School Band, which was a 2024 CCC Honor Band of Texas. These aren't just good groups, they're the best of the best. And when they step on stage at Midwest, TMEA, or Music for All, many of them have Tuner Caddy right there with them. It's been used by university music ed professors to help train future teachers because it works. The classic fits most stands and includes a pencil holder. Student Pro is slim, binder ready, and magnetized, and the new Tuner Metronome combo transposes and has a 6-foot mic, ideal for students and directors alike. You can get them at tunercaddy.com, Music and Arts, Sweetwater, Premier Music Teaching Aids, and local retailers. They even offer grant writing support for educators. Check them out. Welcome back to the Growing Band Director podcast. This is episode number 263. I'm here with Matt Neufeld, composer and teacher from Canada. Matt, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's a great day to be here.
Beautiful. Tell us a little bit about where you're from, what you do, and all that, where you're coming from.
I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. If you take North America and put your finger in the middle, that's roughly where we are. I've been teaching music for 14 years in the public systems. Right now, I'm teaching at a high school, but I've spent about 10 years as a middle school band director. And I started writing music because I wanted to write cool stuff for my kids.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people know your name as one of the hottest sort of up and coming composers. There's a compliment to you. If people haven't heard your works, or even if they have, we're going to listen to, is it five? I think 5 of your pieces today with score and sound, in addition to the conversation that we're going to have as well. So as we're connecting here, first thing I think we're going to start talking about is the sound before sight concept for beginners, but also for older students as well. So like when you say sound before sight, a lot of us have heard of that, but some of us have not. What does that mean and how do we use it?
When I started teaching when I was in university and when I was doing my student teaching, I got to see a lot of people do different things. And one thing that I noticed, and there's obviously a lot of different ways to do things. This is just my own view on things. But I noticed that when kids started with a method book in front of them day one, it was really hard for them to find a good sound, and it took a while for them to really understand that. So one thing that when I was teaching in my second year, I had another teacher who was a really, really great pedagogue who worked with me, and she told me the idea of one thing at a time, which I thought was really important.
Mhm.
So we I took that and tried to think how can I make this work? Because one thing at a time really means only do one thing at a time. Kids, adults, teenagers can only focus on one thing at a time. So my approach in a nutshell of teaching beginners is you start with small pieces for me it was about 2 weeks. So we do small pieces, which would be mouthpiece for brass, a head joint for flute, mouthpiece and barrel for clarinet, mouthpiece for saxophone. I never started percussion, but if I did, it would probably just be a snare drum practice pad. And we just focus on making a good sound. We find our ways to make a consistent sound, a good sound, so that in about 2 weeks, we put our instrument together and we're not worrying about sound production. We're able to make a good sound on our piece, and that translates to our whole instrument. So when we put our instruments together, we focus just where do we put our hands, how do we do all that, and then we just start with the first five notes of concert B flat for the most part. And we learn songs by ear. We learn dozens of songs by ear. There's no music in front of us at all, which I think is really important. I learned a lot about this as well from having kids. We don't teach kids how to speak by putting a dictionary in front of them. We teach them to speak by speaking around them and by having conversations and meeting them where they're at. So they can play five notes. We add note number six, we add low seven, we add as many as we can. We play as many songs as we can, and we learn patterns. I really love John McAllister's foundation warm-ups for this.
Mm.
I'm sure a lot of you know those. So John McAllister's warm-ups, his foundation warm-ups was the first time I introduced reading music. And it's great because it's five notes top to bottom, and then you do them with articulations, then you add patterns. And so this has taken us to about our month and a half in, and my kids can play up and down their scale. They can play a ton of songs by ear. And then when we finally hand out the method book, the what I do right before that is they don't have their instruments. I made a series of quizzes in online on one of my websites that use musictheory.net, and it's just essentially flashcards for notes, and it works into a test for their first six notes where they've got to get 48 out of 50 correct in a 2 minute time span.
Mm.
And I would never grade this other than complete. If they didn't get it right away, do it again. You got 30 right in 2 minutes, try for 35. And the day after that is when we'd start in the method book. And I found if we did things this way, my kids were comfortable reading music right away, and they didn't have to worry about how do I sound, how do I make notes while they're learning to read. We've just gone through everything one step at a time. We've done sound before sight in a very big way. And then when we get to actually reading out of our method book, it just flies. We would usually do the first 3 pages, the first class of our method book.
I have so many thoughts as you say that. So first of all, the sound before sight, you're right. As a parent, when you teach them to read, they read DOG, but they've hugged 1,000 dogs. They've played with dogs. They've seen dogs go to the bathroom. Like they understand dogs, right? And then they see it. So the concept is easy to understand. And if people haven't heard that before, I'm glad you said that. I also did a podcast with Tatum Greenblatt, and what he said was at first you must listen. It was a way to like, how does big band help you as a person? How does being in a jazz ensemble help you as an adult? And he said the first thing you have to do in a big band is you have to listen before you can play. And your concept is the same thing, because when you're listening and copying, you're listening to other people, you're thinking about your tone, you're thinking about no reading at all. So this whole like listening is also a great life skill too.
Absolutely. The other thing that this approach does, in my province, all of our elementary music educators are orphan Kodai trained, and there's some reading music, especially if they're playing recorder, but it's a lot of stuff by ear. And this translates really well into taking what kids have learned in their elementary music experience in general music and translates that. How do we do that? Now we do band, but we do band in this way.
Yeah, I love that. My wife teaches middle school band 5 to 8, and I teach 9 through 12 in our same district. And every single day with any of our bands, the first thing we're doing, that we might do a B flat scale first, I'm not sure, but usually it's singing, copy me, excuse me,
Mhm.
playing, copy me. My trumpet's up. We're playing. They're copying me. Of try to hide my valves when I can for the valve players, but just developing every single day their ear. And obviously you can kind of set it to, okay, what did we do last time? How can I push them just a little bit? Doesn't have to be just a beginner thing as well.
Absolutely. And in this whole process as well, there's a lot of things that people think, oh, we can just put that off till later. Like you just need to get the notes, you need to get to reading, we need to, be able to play that march. But all of the things that we want to do as mature musicians playing, Holst, playing Mackie, playing Julie Giroux, playing Viet Cong, we need to do those right from day one. One of the things that I do right from day one is get my kids to listen around the room. I say, who is playing like this? Who can we match? When we get our instruments together, then it's can we hear the tuba? Can we listen down to that? Can we listen back to our percussionists for articulation? Can we match? Can we try and sound like the other people in the room? And I find this listen, like you said, if we listen first. That makes so much sense for kids, and they really understand that. And when we do all these mature musical things right from day one, they pay dividends for the rest of their musical career.
There's also a connection here between fitness as well, because people try to like get in shape in a week. I'm just gonna do it. It's like, and then I heard an influencer at one point say, I would take 1,000 average workouts over 10 amazing workouts. So
Right?
if you like, it's one of those, okay, so say you do 30 seconds of call and response, and say you don't think you're doing anything that revolutionary, but you do it every single day. Like the compound on that interest is going to be great for your kids, and it's going to show up in all the pieces you play.
Absolutely. I think of it as you're putting quarters in a jar.
Yeah, love that. Also, not just concert band, jazz band, marching band, chamber
Absolutely.
winds, and anything you do.
When I teach jazz band, I like to have a standard of the week that we learn.
Mm.
And at first, kids are like, "What's going on? You mean I don't have to play by notes?" Or I've like they freak out a little bit the first time they've done it, but they start to really like it. I heard it said, I was talking to someone the other day, and this is somebody who's equally comfortable in the concert and jazz world. And he said, for us in concert, band, in orchestra, the score is kind of our guide stone. We go back to the score, we go to the printed music for what's most important. But in jazz, the recordings are the
Hmm.
cornerstone. You go to recordings, and it's very important to note that recordings don't have sheet music associated with them. You've got to listen. I had a teacher of mine tell me once, all the answers are in the recordings.
Yeah. That's great advice for a lot of teachers who have not figured that out yet, especially the younger teachers. Is like,
Mm.
just listen to the recording. Like, even if you have no more advice to go with, listen to the recording and try to get them and to copy that recording best they can. That's it's great advice. You were talking about reading music on the concert band side of things too. So you also talk about using repertoire as your curriculum.
Absolutely.
I know that's something we want to talk about as well. Will point people if they want to check it out. I did a I can't even say it, curriculum mapping episode with Tiffany Hitz. It was number 102. And then also as a throwback episode on April 5th, if people didn't want to check that out, she kind of goes through her kind of planning with curriculum mapping and all that. So when you talk about your curriculum being, the program, the repertoire that you use, how does that fit in, and how do you plan your year through that?
So whatever level I'm thinking about, the repertoire that we play is the most important thing that we do. If you think of an English class, right? It's the books and the poetry that the kids are reading, and they learn everything through those books and poetry. I think band is the same. We use our music as our curriculum to help teach our students the skills that we want. And it's sure we want to be teaching skills outside of the rep. We want, when you're learning 6/8, you've got to do exercises in 6/8. You've got to learn how to do that, but then you find an authentic home for it in repertoire.
Mhm.
So when I was teaching, I'll talk about beginner band. When I was teaching my first year kids, my beginners were my sixes, and my second years were my sevens. So when I was teaching sevens, I had this goal that at the start of the year, we would learn how to do 6/8 time. And in the second half of the year would be when we would learn how to play 16th notes. So obviously there's stuff in method books for that. I use Tradition of Excellence, but there's lots of other great stuff out there. So in the second Tradition of Excellence book, we find 6/8, we find 16th notes for the full band. So if I'm going to teach 6/8, we have to perform a 6/8 piece. So as I taught for a while, I started making a collection of pieces that were good to teach 6/8 time. And I started making collections of what pieces are for teaching 16th notes.
I'm just going to pause you real quick. Give us a couple pieces of each that you like.
So for the longest time, the only piece that I had access to for teaching beginners 6/8, and I'm talking very like level one, was All Ye Young Sailors by Pierre Laplante.
Mhm.
And that one's always do you know that one?
Yeah.
That's so much fun. Kids love it because it's the SpongeBob SquarePants theme. It's well written. It's pretty complex. But then Randall Sandridge came out with Starfire Fanfare, and that one got added to my rotation of 6/8 pieces right away. And then Gerard Hall added Ready the Castle, and so those tunes were ones I would use to teach 6/8 time all the time. And more come out every day.
And then what about for 16th notes?
For 16th notes, the first one that I used was March Zuma by John O'Reilly. Classic one. Kids love March Zuma. And that one's got a little bit of stuff for everybody. Great bass lines, good percussion lines. Not a lot of percussion, but you can always double the snare on practice pads. And then again, Randall Sandridge to the rescue comes out with Fanfare for the 16th Empire. That one's easier than March Zuma, but it's a great tune, and Randall has been coming out with lots more in that series. And then I needed something a little bit more challenging for more combinations. So I actually wrote a piece for myself that's published through my website. It's an arrangement of What Shall We Do with the Drunken Sailor that has all of the 16th note combinations. I find the one we don't see is 16th, 8 16ths, da
Hmm.
da 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 da. But if you look at the verses for What Shall You Do with the Drunken Sailor, you've got that one in there with lyrics.
That's great. I love that. So people should kind of check out the timestamp and go back and kind of search for those pieces as well. We didn't kind of plan to put all those on here, but so people, if any of those kind of struck your fancy, go back and check the recordings of that on your own. Let's move to the first piece of yours that we're going to talk about. So when I asked you which pieces we should feature, I mean, I had some thoughts, but I wanted to hear from you. Like, if people have never heard your work before, what are 5 pieces that we should use? So people might have heard of some of these pieces, but hopefully a lot of people have not. We're going to start with After the Rain. For each one of these, if it's okay, Matt, I'm going to give, before we listen to a snippet or all of it, we'll see, I'm going to give just a little bit that I wrote, but after that, obviously you take it from there. Tell us about the formation of the piece and what makes it, what you think great, and all that stuff. Okay.
Absolutely. I always love
So,
hearing what other people have to say.
well, I've been busy, so I wrote a little bit, but I could have written more. I'll say that. I probably got a B on this portion of the test. After the Rain, I have it's grade 1. It's about 3 minutes. 5 to 6 percussionists. It uses the first 6 notes plus concert A flat and E natural. Big deal. The mallet percussion writing helps with a ballad at a younger age. It's sort of the way you wrote the mallet percussion. This sort of acts like a metronome, a little bit behind the kids. So that's what I've got. What do you have?
That's so you've got a lot of the pedagogical reasons which I wrote this. I started After the Rain initially trying to write a point 0.5. It's really hard to write a point 0.5 lyrical
Mm.
piece, but I started out with first 6 notes only, and then again I was talking earlier about what kids can do versus what they should do. And you mentioned concert A flat and E natural. And Kyle, there is no reason why, if kids can play their first 6 notes, that they can't also play a low concert A flat and a concert E natural. It's easy to do, and it's clarinets is just different finger. It's not hard to do, and it adds a lot of color. So I wanted the story behind After the Rain was it rained for about a week here in Winnipeg after not raining all summer. And I walked outside as it had stopped raining and I saw the clouds part and the sun comes out and I hear the water dripping off of my eaves troughs. And that water dripping off of the eaves troughs plus the inspiration of the sun coming out from behind the clouds, everything is going to be okay again. That was the inspiration for
Mm.
the piece.
Love it. Let's check it out. Here's After the Rain. Okay. The second piece we're going to listen to is called Northern Lights. This is a grade 3. So for people who are like, well, wait a minute, my band can't play a grade 3, well, still listen to it because you want to hear about the music. And then afterwards, we do have a grade 1, a grade 1.5, and a grade point 0.5. So that was not the only grade 1. Northern Lights. I probably got a C plus on this one, I think. Grade 3, 3 minutes and 40 seconds, 8 percussion, which I think is great. The 5/4 opening. Sorry, 5/4. I said it could be an opening work or a closing work. I also like how you have some. I'm going to use the word sporadic. I don't mean random, but you have some 4/4 and some 3/4 kind of put in there for some meter changes as well.
I love meter changes. When I was in university, I played the Eric Wazen trumpet sonata, and
Mm,
final movement of that is in 5/8. It's in 4/4. It's in 2/4. It changes meter every couple bars, and I really fell in love with using mixed meter. So it's not that insane with my younger band writing, but even in After the Rain, it has a 2/4 bar just thrown in there because kids can do that.
mhm. Yep. Great. Anything else about the history of the piece or why you wrote it before we listen to it?
This piece is really near and dear to me. It was my first ever commission, and I wrote it for a friend of mine who taught grade 6 to 9 band here in my city. And he brought me in and said, "Talk to the kids, see what they want." And the overwhelming thing that the kids came up with is, well, our mascot of our school is the wolf, and that's kind of cool. So I went home and I thought about it, and I had this kind of mental image of a pack of wolves running and frolicking over an Arctic tundra with the northern lights above. And that was the inspiration for the piece. So the title Wolves was my initial title, but that doesn't really say what the piece is. So we went with Northern Lights, the shifting, shimmering display of energy in the sky. It's if seeing them in person is always incredible. And that's why the piece is in 5/4 because we have this shifting, shimmering ostinato, ba 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 ba, and everything comes from that. And it's a grade 3. It's a challenging 3, but it's a great introduction in my opinion to 5/4 because the music is very motivic and it's very ostinato based. So you have the same thing that gets played over and over and over. You see a lot of the same rhythms over and over and over. And that makes it easy for kids to latch onto it.
Love it. Let's check it out. Here's Northern Lights. So Matt, you compose for some companies as well. Your pieces are published through some companies, but you also have your own company. Tell us a little bit about where your pieces are published through and your own company and your website.
So my own website is mattneufeldmusic.com. No one ever can spell my last name, so here it is, Neufeld, mattneufeldmusic.com. And I started my own company. It's company makes it sound really formal. It's just a place for me to put
Hmm.
things up online that I finished. The compositional the process when a piece is written to when it's published is pretty long. It's about a year-long process. Companies they want you to submit your things usually at the start of the year, and then they'll be published a year later. So if I have something that I want to get out that's not getting published, it's easy for me to just throw it on my website. It's something I'm really grateful that we can do that wouldn't have been possible 20 years ago.
It's great. So people should go there. They should listen. You have recordings and stuff up for them to check out.
Always. One thing, if there's any aspiring composers listening, one thing that my co-teacher and I talk about a lot of the time is if we want to buy someone's music, we need to be able to see and hear it.
Yeah.
If there's no scores, if there's no recordings, it makes it very difficult for us to justify purchasing music that we haven't heard and can't look at. So please make sure that there are perusal scores and recordings on your websites.
Yeah. I mean, if you haven't heard or seen it, like I don't remember the last time I did that, like ever, but once in a while you'll hear a piece only, and if you absolutely know what you're listening to, you might be able to get it. So like recording is like 100%. And then the video or the perusal score, right, is at least a 90%. Like you really need to have that.
Yeah. Yeah, and you need both. As teachers, we're looking for things like, can my trumpets play that?
Yeah. I've had people on the show and they say, yeah, like older band directors, and like Terry White was one of them. And he says, back in the day, they used to do the editor's cuts, right? And then what would
Mhm.
happen is the piece would go from F to G flat, but they'd cut it before you go to G flat because they know you won't buy it. So then they'll cut it so you don't hear that. Then you buy the piece and you see it and you're like, wait a minute. So they
Uh,
used, good thing that doesn't happen anymore.
I remember getting all those publishers' CDs back in the day,
Yep.
and we listened to the 30-second snippet of every piece.
Yep. That's nice. Not enough though. We like having all of it.
Yeah.
So just a little bit about you as a composer. I've asked this to Timothy Marr and Quincy Hilliard and lots of other composers as well. Just a couple things so we can kind of see behind the curtain a little bit as you create music. What is your compositional process? How do you like go from idea to on paper? Do you use piano? Do you write on the computer? Do you use recording devices? Like, what do you do?
The answer to all of those questions is yes.
Right?
My process is a little bit different for every song that I write. Some songs I will get a melody and I'll write that down. Some songs I'll be messing around with the piano and I'll find a chord progression that I like and I'll write that down. Sometimes I'll be in the car and I'll just be humming something to myself and I'll quickly pop on my voice recorder to hear me do that. It's a little bit different every time. But what I like starting with is actually pen and paper. So I find I'm more creative when I have pen and paper. Usually I'll sketch out ideas, not necessarily whole pieces, but I'll sketch out ideas and maybe rhythms and maybe some chords in a book. I also have a separate notebook that I like to write a lot of text. I'm I'm working on a piece right now that I was like, okay, so this is the journey of a ship that now lives in a museum inside my hometown. So I was writing about its journey and thinking that this section needs to be hopeful. This section needs to be triumphant. This section needs to be things like that.
Hmm.
Because writing out text is very important, and then using um, planning your piece is really important as well. My composition teachers would tell me about that. That your workings, your text and your chicken scratch is really important. So what I'll usually do once I've got a couple ideas and once I have an idea of what the piece is supposed to be like, then I will hop into Sibelius. I'm a Sibelius user.
Same.
So yeah, so I'll usually put in my template of my concert band piece or whatever, and then at the bottom I'll throw a couple piano staves, and then I will often just work in short score and throw all of my ideas into the whole piece, and then work through that. I just finished a piece a month or so ago called "By the Dark of the Moon." That one is a fun exploration of Au clair de la lune, but in a minor key. And so I had kind of planned out the piece and I sketched out the entire piece in short score form before I orchestrated anything. And as I'm sketching out in short score form, I'll write things like trumpets play here. We
Mm.
need a spooky background here. We need a percussion section here. I want the bells to play here and the tambourine to play alongside that. So once I have orchestrated or once I put everything in short score, occasionally I'll have an idea that I'll know this goes in the trumpets. But you put everything in short score and then you orchestrate from there.
And then
And
and then as your so say your piece is complete. Like say you go, okay, I think it's complete. How do you make sure that the parts are cool? Because I had somebody say, I don't know if you heard me say this on the podcast before, but like directors who choose pieces based on what the parts look like rather than what the score looks like, because I'm my first arrangement of I think it was Jesu Joy of Men's Desiring,
oh
like
yeah.
I didn't do that at all. And then I looked at the French horn part for Brett and it was like literally all whole notes or I was like, oh my gosh. So how do you
Uh-huh.
ensure that the parts are good?
So as I'm writing out a piece, I'm always really aware to make sure that everyone has good parts. When I was just starting out as a band teacher, actually no, I'm going to go even further back. I had actually wanted to be a French horn player when I started out. So I get my trumpet because my teacher said you've got to play trumpet for a year, then you can be a French horn player. And get my trumpet, work hard, switch to French horn. Great, it's time to play French horn. And then I get my part in band, and it was all whole notes. Like, why did I work so hard to be able to switch if I'm just going to play boring parts? And I switched back to trumpet because I was just so bored with French horn.
Hmm.
Now, this was in the late 90s, and I'm so grateful to say that music has changed and writers understand that everybody needs good parts. So to go back to your question, I actually go through every part and make sure that there's something good. And as I'm engraving is the process where you are making sure the notes and rhythms look good. It's a separate process from the compositional process. I will go through all the parts and just make sure that there's something for everybody, that it's not just whole notes or whatever, that everybody has something interesting to play.
I love that. Who are some of the composers that you consider influences? Either people who are older or passed on be through pieces you've played, or people who are currently composers that you sort of view as your influences.
So my biggest influence of all time, when I was in grade 4, I turned on the TV because, we did that back then to just watch television. And I see this scene. There's a spaceship and there's like these robots and they're on a desert planet. This movie is Star Wars and it captivated me right from when I was a little kid. I I think my parents were probably frustrated with me because I don't think I talked about anything other than Star Wars from about grade 4 to grade 10. But back in the day, there's this thing called Columbia House where you would buy 12 CDs for $1, and then you
Oh
had to
yeah,
buy one CD for a year at
I remember
like
that. Yeah.
$90. Yeah, the CDs that I got with that were the soundtracks to the original Star Wars movies. And I listened to those over and over and over and over again. And I loved that as I listened, I could tell exactly what was happening in the movies. So it was really then that I fell in love with the music of John Williams.
Mm.
His music is cinematic, it's evocative, it's colorful, it says so much. I don't know if there's any other composers in the movie business who have been as influential as John Williams,
Yeah.
and I can listen to anything he's written.
And if people haven't seen the recent documentary that came out within the last year of him, they should check it out. It's totally worth it.
Mhm.
You mentioned earlier for young composers, make sure there's score and sound that we can see and hear your music. Besides that, so you've been composing for how long now?
Uh, I have been writing for band since about 2016,
Okay.
2015, 2016, and I've been messing around writing since I was in grade 10, so probably over 20 years at this point, 20,
Okay,
25
so
years.
let's just talk about the last 8, 9, 10 years that you've kind of been actively writing for band. If you could go back and give yourself some lessons, here's something I should do, here's something I should avoid. So advice that you might have for people who are just starting out in their compositional journey, things that you've learned along the way.
Ah, I get asked this a lot when I go work with bands, and the advice that I give everybody is give yourself permission to suck.
Hmm.
Don't worry about writing the next Beethoven symphony. Don't worry about writing the next concerto that will be groundbreaking for everything. When you are just starting, you need to understand that you're going to go through a lot before you have something that's incredible. But that's okay. So what you have to do, you have to allow yourself to write something that's not good and don't get hung up on that. The idea of good and bad is actually very harmful during the compositional process, at least in the initial stages. You want to just finish things. So give yourself permission to suck, finish what you're doing, even if it's just an 8 bar exercise or if it's a 30 bar, whatever you're writing. Finish what you're doing. And then, really important is get that music in front of people. When you're just starting, especially if you're in high school, you might not have the opportunity to write a full concert band piece or a symphony orchestra piece or whatever. But what you can do is you can write for yourself. So if you play clarinet, write yourself an exercise on clarinet. And the things that you know, if you're a high school clarinetist, you know what a clarinet can and can't do. And so write yourself something. And then your next step, write something for one of your friends. So you're that clarinet player, you've written something for yourself. You've got a friend over there who plays bassoon and then another friend who plays alto saxophone. Write a duet for them and learn about that from them. Some of the best experiences I had when I was in college, I wrote a saxophone quartet for some friends as kind of a Christmas joke. And workshopping that with them was amazing. They were like, okay, we can do this. This fingering doesn't really work for us for this trill, so can you fix it? And can you give me some time to breathe here? Things like that are all really important. Get your music in front of other people.
Okay, so the next piece we're going to listen to is The Haunted Mansion. This is a grade one. It's about 2 minutes. I love the 2 minute time lane because like so many people try to write it might be an easy enough piece in what it's demanding, but it's too long, right? So,
Hmm.
and like length is something people should be considering when what their students can do. Like they can do it for 2 minutes, they might not be able to do it for 3 minutes. Um,
Absolutely.
so uses six percussion. It's in C minor, as we discussed earlier. It uses E natural and F sharp. And you said it kind of came out of your frustration with like so many C minor pieces.
Absolutely. So C minor is a really good key to write for a beginner band because if you're going to use your first 6 notes that we all learn, C minor fits really nicely into that. It gives us our tonic, it gives us our dominant, and all the other notes in between. But you know what? I have gotten frustrated of so many pieces that say they're in a minor key, but they don't do the things that we had come to expect from in a minor key piece. We expect that raised leading tone. And so the Haunted Mansion came out of that. It was I wanted a melody that was in an authentic minor key. And also one thing uh, that I do with my bands that I know we all do is you have to teach them how to encounter accidentals. You have to know, okay, well there's a sharp in my part. What do I do with that? How long does that last? What like do I have to think about these things? Accidentals are not optional. We have to teach that, right?
Mhm.
So if you want to teach something, you've got to have it in you've got to do pieces that involve it. So the Haunted Mansion is a piece where the melody involves some accidentals, especially in the leading tone, and every melodic part gets an accidental somewhere. I thought that was really important. There's something about this that kids really like. It's a spooky piece. It's not scary, it's spooky, and it's nice to talk about the difference with with that. And there's at the end, I have my wife to thank for this. There's kind of the build up, ba da da da, and you heard the scream, ba ba. And when I had initially written that, you see it in the score that there was just a triangle ding because I thought that would be funny. But then my wife walks in as I'm writing it, and she says somebody should really scream there. I have my wife to thank for a lot of my best ideas.
That's great.
She's not a professional musician. She does play, but she's a civil engineer by trade. But she's got tons of good ideas. I'll talk a little bit about more about what the Haunted Mansion also does for you as band teachers is, as I mentioned before, it has accidentals everywhere. Everybody gets the melody in a very authentic way. This is a study in contrast, both dynamic and articulation. You're going to find that there have to be loud and there has to be soft, and they have to be really different because that's what's spooky. It's got to be short, it's got to be long. And the other, I wanted to highlight the percussion part a little bit. One of the other reasons I wrote this piece is because my percussionists one day were fighting about who got to play snare drum and about who wanted to play bass drum. And I said, enough of that. No one's going to have any of those. So I actually wrote the timpani part in this to be more like an orchestral timpani part. It's very important. If you only have one person, the timpani is what you need. And I also wanted this to be a study in percussionists playing accessory percussion. So the percussion one part is written for one percussionist who has to swap between percussion instruments. The percussion two part is written for two percussionists who actually have to pass some instruments back and forth at times. They've got to be able to do that. And the percussion three is just a woodblocks part that is a little bit more challenging if you got someone who wants to try something a little bit harder.
I love that. And this might not be the first grade one. Like when your kids get into grade one, like this probably maybe not the first grade one you're going to do. And maybe it's a 1.5, or, you do it when your kids have been playing grade one and you want to incorporate some of these a little bit more advanced grade one topics like accidentals
Absolutely.
and instrumentation.
Where I
Um,
would use this piece, I wrote this for a second year band for them to play at their fall concert.
yep. That sounds perfect. Yep. You mean around Halloween?
Oh, that would work, I think.
Interesting. All right, the next piece we're going to listen to is a grade one. And I'm just going to say this: you're the composer, you're the one who's right. I put that in my opinion, it might be a grade two. It's definitely a harder. It's a 1+ because of length and the dissonance. It's 4 minutes. This is called Empty Portraits. I love the imagery of this piece, but students need to be comfortable with playing in dissonance, and I think that's a teaching piece on this piece for sure. And the slow opening, I mean, we've been working a lot like with Air for Band recently, and like the crescendo up, the crescendo down, every measure kind of thing. And the beginning of this piece also asks them to do that.
Absolutely. I'm going to agree with you. The reason it's graded out of 1.5 is because technically the technical requirements of this piece is a 1.5, but I find musically it's a 2, maybe even a 2.5. And this is the neat thing about Empty Portraits. So I'll go on to say that this is the second movement of the Haunted Mansion suite. There's three in total. The Haunted Mansion is the first movement, Empty Portraits is the second movement, and then Midnight Waltz is the third movement. And what Empty Portraits is, just the story behind it is you're in the haunted mansion and you're in a hallway, and the hallway is really long. You can't see the end. It's got columns, it's got torches, it's got a big green carpet with a red secondary carpet down the middle, and these big ornate portraits on the wall. And as you walk down, you're walking down the hall, it's kind of hazy and foggy, and you see some motion in the corner of your eye, and you look over, and the person in the portrait is gone. And then you shake your head and they're back. And you wonder if it was just that a trick of the light. You can't help but feel like you're being watched as you walk down this hallway. So you mentioned dissonance, and grading. I agree with you that this is at least a grade two. Um, and the reason I wrote this one is because I wanted my students to experience a lot of dissonance in their music. And one of the things that I really believe is that younger students can actually handle a lot of dissonance if it's approached and prepared properly. Um, and also, they really like it. It's colorful, it's fun to play. And it also harkens back. How old am I? Harkens. It reflects the music that we're seeing in the more advanced music that we're doing right now. I was at a performance last night of Aurora Awakes by John Mackey, a terrifically colorful piece with very, very, very thick, dense chords. And there's no reason that our younger students can't do that. So there's a lot of dissonance in empty portraits on purpose because kids need to learn how to do that. They need to learn, oh, my note isn't wrong. And when you have that rub of the dissonance, that you actually need to lean into it
Hmm.
rather than shy away from it. And that's what makes it sound good.
And especially if
So
they're, especially, I just want to jump in as if they're the lower note, I've heard like the lower note needs to come out a little bit more than the upper note too, for sure. And that's a life lesson too, because it'd be like, do you see how much different this sounds when the two of you play so much louder? Like without your note, this piece is not anything like it is right now. So like you're really important here because even though it says clarinet three or two or trumpet three or whatever, you are very important, the color of your sound.
absolutely. And it's one of those things that I think it's important that everybody knows, even if you're playing clarinet 19, your part is still important to the sound of the whole band. Right? It's not just who's better and who's worse. It's playing first and second and third. It's every part is important. And I think that's something kids need to understand. Even if you see your part, if it's not the first part, if you're not first chair out of 200 French horns, huh, we only wish, right? Your part is still important and it matters. So, empty portraits as the a movement of the Haunted Mansion suite. The whole thing again has accidentals in every part. And the reason I wrote this again is dissonance. There is also a juxtaposition of major and minor tonalities at the same time.
Mm.
So being in C minor, we're going to see that E natural come out of the woodwork a couple times. And the other thing that's really important about empty portraits is that it has the dotted quarter eighth note rhythm in it, as well as a note that's held over a bar line. Those are, again, important things we need to teach that are in this piece. And the first 15 bars or so they're quite challenging. But then we get into the other reason I wrote it is a lyrical piece that's not slow. The tempo I believe is chord note equals 100. If you play this, please don't play the middle part slow. It's got to go fast enough, but lyrical pieces don't just come in something where we kind of sit in our own juices for a little while and simmer. This one moves along. And there's a lot of great pieces out there like that. Tyler Grant's got a couple. Tyler Grant's a great writer. Absolutely love his stuff. Love him as a person too.
Mm.
He's just the best guy. So this is, yeah, empty portraits is not slow except for the first little bit. And something else I found about empty portraits is actually high schoolers love playing this because there's a lot of thematic development in it. I handed this out to my grade 10s earlier this year, and they wanted to play it. One of my friends handed this out to her grade 10 group, and she said that they wouldn't leave class one day until they got to play this.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, let's check it out. Here it is. All right, so we have one more piece to listen to, but before we do that, Matt, what's the name of a piece, like an older piece that you really love that you think people should know about?
Uh, this is one that everybody probably already knows about, but the classic Air and Dance.
Hmm.
I can play that tune. I don't like playing tunes every year, but if I had to pick one tune to play every year, it would probably be that one.
Who's the composer?
I think is that Bruce Pearson? I'm not great with names, but I think
Okay.
it's let me look at it. Air and Dance. Yeah, it is Bruce Pearson. Yeah, that piece just has so much music in it. The first half is so evocative. You can teach lyrical style, and then the dance part you get to talk about matching, and you can talk about playing period music. There's just so much in that older piece of music that is still valid today.
What's the grade
It's
level?
I believe that's grade one.
Okay.
I think it's, I was talking with someone about this the other day, and I feel like the sound of wind band music has fundamentally changed in the last 10 or 15
Sure
years.
has.
There's more percussion, there's more understanding that inner voices need color and they need to have more interesting parts and just a more acceptance of younger students can have more interesting things. In the older grade levels, we see piano as an integral part of the ensemble. We even see that in some of the younger pieces. Randall Sandridge has piano really important in his Unbroken series. I played Fragile a couple years ago with my kids. That piano part's very important. Lots of percussion, lots and lots and lots of percussion.
Hmm. Love that. I agree with you. And then the name of a teacher that you think does a really great job.
So I want to talk about one of my friends, and she is one of the teachers at a high school in the same division as me. But she's been a middle school band teacher. She's taught kind of all over. And my friend Shannon Little is one of my favorite human beings in the world. She's just a really real person. Like she's always, whenever you're talking with her, she's always present with you, and she is she's just the best person. She's a phenomenal trumpet player. I've had the opportunity to sit beside her in our local concert band for the last 15 years or so. She's a phenomenal trumpet player and a phenomenal music educator. And kids love her, and she has a great way. She always knows what to do to get kids from where they are to their next step, but also to help them just love music. So, Shannon, if you're listening to this, you're the absolute best.
I love that. Beautiful. Thank you. All right. So we're going to end with one more piece of yours. This is a piece called Stone Age, and this is a point five, 2.5 minutes long, seven percussionists, and the optional percussion battle, I think, is pretty awesome. Tell us about Stone Age. Oh, before we talk about Stone Age, I want to thank you very much for being here, for spending the time with us. And how do people reach out to you if they're looking to connect with you? Just put in your name and they'll find you on social media and all the things.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Blue Sky. I'm not on X, Twitter, whatever it's called these days.
Mhm.
But the easiest way to reach out to me is if you go to my website, www.mattnewfeldmusic.com, just search for it, and there's a contact form, and I get that, and I do my best to respond as quick as I can.
Yeah, love that. All right, so we're going to end with Stone Age. I said a little bit about it. Tell us the history of it.
So with Stone Age, again, I wanted something for my younger kids that was really fun, but I'd experienced a lot of music written for young band that is kind of this idea of we're just gonna play loud, we're gonna see triple forte in this piece. And the idea the idea of having play as loud as you can because the music tells you play three fortes or four fortes, I don't like what that does for kids. I don't think it leads to musical playing. I don't think it leads to thoughtful playing. It certainly doesn't lead to listening across the band. So I thought I'd like to write something that uses only the first six notes, so that puts it at a point five, that will be fun to play, that has something for everybody, and that also is something meaningful for kids. And so I started with I was this one I remember what I was doing. I was sitting at the piano and I just played an open fifth, just CG. And I thought, oh, that sounds kind of primitive. And so then CG and then B flat F going between those two fifths. And I thought, huh, I wonder if I could write a piece about the Stone Age, something kind of that feels very, 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 very ancient. And then I thought, okay, well, what's the sound of that? Okay, so we need toms, we need lots of like wood sounding instruments. And then maybe we need a little bit of like who, ha, he, like vocalizations like that. And then Stone Age was born. And this one, this when I wrote this, I usually write for my kids, or at least I used to do a lot of that. And I wrote this for my grade sevens, so they played it at the start of the year and loved it. But my grade sixes heard it and said, "We want to do it," and they wouldn't let it go. So in the same year, my grade sixes played it at the end of the year. So this is a really appropriate piece for end of the year grade sixes, again, being first year, end of the year, first year players, or start of the year, second year players. And I know Del Hubers played this with his kids a while ago and really, really, really enjoyed it. So there's that too.
Wonderful. Matt, thanks so much for being here. Let's check out Stone Age.
Thank you.
We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.